Mono Blue Aggro. Let's ride. Hello everybody, welcome to Nerd Lab. My name is Brian and today we got a special video for you. The deck that we are going over is not just going to be featured in this deck tech, but it was played on the Brothers War EDH channel. There will be a link in the description down below. Go check them out. They got great gameplay videos. They got a podcast they're doing. If you're like me and you like what they got going on over there, give them a like. Better yet, subscribe to them. And let them know in the comments down below. And while you're typing that in, let them know that I sent you. A little cross-promotional action going on here. But now, without further ado, I got for you the Mono Blue for 2, Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel. Let's get into the deck tech. Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel is a Siren Pirate costing 1 and a blue. He has Flash, Flying, and whenever Malcolm, Alluring Scoundrel deals combat damage to a player, put a chorus counter on it. Draw a card, then discard a card. If there are 4 or more chorus counters on Malcolm, you may cast the discarded card without paying its mana cost. Malcolm is a low-to-the-ground commander with a couple of important keywords. Like what? Well, the first one is Flash. It's very important to protect Malcolm at all cost. So it's very important to bring out Malcolm as late as possible, preferably when your opponent is going to his end step. Oh yeah, that makes sense. The next important keyword is Flying. It's very important to have any kind of evasion because you're going to have Malcolm out early and you're going to be swinging often. And you need to get the combat damage through because every time you do, you get to put a chorus counter on him. And then you draw a card, discard a card. And that loot ability is great, but what you really want to do is get to that 4th counter because then you can start casting big bombs for free. And as usual, the 2 most important things in any deck, ramp and card draw. So let's start with ramp. Ramp. Now Malcolm is only 2 mana, so we don't need a ton of ramp in this deck. But if we can get him out on turn 1, that is a huge win. Huge! Playing him on turn 1 will be nice, but it's not going to be cheap. Lotus Petal is the cheapest way to get him out. The second cheapest way is Jeweled Lotus, and after that is Mana Crypt. Outside of that, the best you can do is turn 1 Soul Ring, then turn 2 use your Soul Ring to cast Lightning Greaves, then cast Malcolm, equip, and swing in. Other than that, we have Gilded Lotus, because if Malcolm does keep getting blown up and he will be a target, it's nice to have that extra 3 mana to start casting these big spells later on. Which brings us to our next section, Protection.
Always wear protection.
Well, we're in blue, so we gotta go with counter spells. An offer you can't refuse, Arcane Denial, Counter Spell itself, Force of Negation, Swan Song, Tail's End, and of course, Fierce Guardianship. You got a low mana commander, this is the best one. But hey, there are a million counter spells out there. Pick the ones that you want. Just make sure you have answers for creature spells, non-creature spells, and activated abilities. Because the most important thing is to keep Malcolm on the board. Lightning Greaves, Swiftfoot Boots, and Whisper Silk Cloak will also help him stay on the board once he gets there. And with that being said, let's get into some card draw. And oh boy, is there some card draw in this deck. First off, Malcolm himself is a card draw engine. When you pair him up with a card like Alhammarret's Archive, you are drawing 2 cards and discarding 1 every single time you deal combat damage. Aught Reflection does the same thing. Reconnaissance Mission and Coastal Piracy will also draw you cards off of the same Malcolm trigger. And of course you're in blue, so you're gonna be running Rhystic Study. But I also threw Estrid's Invocation and Mirror Maid in, because once you get that expensive Thought Reflection or Alhammarret's Archive out, you want to be able to copy it for 3 mana.
Oh, that's nice.
And Mirror Maid is just a great versatile card because you can copy any artifact or enchantment on the battlefield, even your opponent's. And since we're in blue, we have access to the Commander All-Star, Consecrated Sphinx. So we get tons of card draw in this deck, so we want to take advantage of it with cards like Ominous Seas and Psychic Corrosion. Ominous Seas is going to give us an 8/8 blue Kraken basically every time we draw 8 cards. You get it out early and it's a great way to put up defenses, and eventually get an 8/8 army to swing in with. Psychic Corrosion is whenever you draw a card, each opponent mills 2 cards. This is a very sneaky way to get a win. And these are great, but what's the win con in this deck? What are we really trying to do? Win con! What we're really trying to do is get Malcolm to 4 so we can cast some big boys. Big boys! In this deck, we can possibly get a turn 3, turn 4 Omniscience. That means we're filling our hand with all of this good stuff, and then we get to cast it for free. Spells like Shark Typhoon, Storm of Sauron, Mnemonic Deluge, Aminatu's Augury, and one of my favorite pet cards, Clone Legion. Clone Legion is so much fun to play, but if you don't want to copy all of your 8/8s or someone else's huge board, then you can always just win with Hullbreaker Horror and Aetherflux Reservoir. Because with Omniscience out, you can keep recycling spells on the battlefield until you get an infinite storm count up and start laser beaming people down for 50 damage each. Man, I love this deck. I could talk about it for hours, but I won't. Just go to my Mox field, check it out, goldfish it a few times. You can play this deck at high level tables or low level tables because you get to choose which big spells you put in there. If you don't want to combo somebody out, then fill your deck with Sphinxes, Krakens, and Dragons. If your table's good with extra turn spells, then fill with a bunch of extra turn spells and make them scoop or mill them out. If you want me to build a budget version of this deck, that'd be simple. Just let me know in the comments down below. But until then, take care of yourself and embrace the chaos.